Welcome back to the channel. I'm Tim Gordon. I'm excited to talk to you about cognitive defusion, cognitive fusion. How does it work? How does it actually cause us to suffer more? And what does ACT say that we can do about it? There's one simple technique that I can teach you to help you get some distance from your thoughts and change the way that you interact with them. As a social worker, author, and ACT trainer, I am excited to dive into this often completely misunderstood ACT concept and process. Fusion, or cognitive fusion, happens when we buy into our thoughts. If you don't understand what those words mean, my wife explains it in this really interesting and cool way. Cognitive is what we think, and fusion is what happens when you heat up two metals and you press them together. At an atomic level, they start to exchange atoms. Defusion is kind of like splitting those two metals apart, getting some separation between the two of them, which I'm told is actually really hard to do, but I don't study physics like she does, so it's a bit outside of my comfort zone. Instead, let's focus on how we can work with it and how it makes sense that we get fused. Fusion, if you think about how it works in your everyday life, it's not actually a bad thing. Fusion takes place when you take thoughts as literal. So imagine just for a moment, you've been following along on this YouTube channel. You've been soaking in some really interesting exercises. You're learning to become more present. You're becoming more defused, let's say, from your thoughts. And as you're walking down the street, you're so defused from your experience. You're so separate from it. You're noticing it. You're observing it. You're catching how it influences your behavior. There's a bus careening towards you at a high rate of speed. You can see that there's no driver in the driver's seat. And as you see the light gleaming off of the windshield, you notice these pangs of anxiety, tension arising in your body, and you're curious about it. And then before you know it, you've been hit by a bus. Okay, what a horrible example, I know. But the idea here is you want to be fused with, there's a bus careening towards me at high rate of speed. You don't even want to have those thoughts. You just want to jump out of the way, right? You want your nervous system to take over and get you the heck out of there. If I'm watching a movie with you and there's this big scary shark and this really intense music, I don't want you being like, hey, you know that's a rubber shark, right? I mean, maybe for film students that's appropriate, but don't harsh my vibe watching Jaws. I want to be in the moment. I want to be feeling that bit of anxiety and the heart palpitations that come with this shark is jumping out of the water. Fusion is helpful to us at times. I want you to imagine while you're watching this video or listening to my voice, it can be really helpful to get into the thoughts, fuse with them, start taking things that I'm describing as literal rather than just noticing, let's say, the sound of my voice or noticing your reactions to the sound of my voice. Now, maybe while I'm speaking to you, maybe something takes over inside of you and says, I have no idea what Tim is talking about. This was my experience when I was learning ACT, where I literally had the thought, I'm too stupid to learn ACT. It was so sophisticated and complex and written in this behavioralese language that was like learning a new language for me. It was very intimidating. That thought was very believable. I became fused with it. And when I became fused with that thought, my reaction wasn't to be curious about that, to take care of myself, to reach out to somebody who could help me. My reaction was to close the book, learning ACT, and to walk away from it. That thought, buying into it, getting fused with it, actually cost me more in my life and made my life more difficult. Imagine having a difficult thought, and I'm sure you have them all the time. A thought that you might have that's really particularly painful. Maybe you're doing something difficult, maybe trying to learn about defusion, an often misunderstood concept and process in acceptance and commitment therapy, and you think to yourself, I'm a failure. Try this instead. Noticing the thought, I'm a failure, just as I noticed the thought, I'm too stupid to learn ACT. And what if you could say to yourself, maybe even out loud, I'm failing at this. I feel like I'm too stupid to learn this. Now, those who are savvy to ACT, and if you want to learn more about this, don't forget to check out my video, What is ACT and How to Do It? You might notice that there's multiple processes happening from ACT's core processes and how I'm describing this. A little bit of acceptance, a little bit of receiving a thought, having a willingness to have that hot thought. You'll notice that there's a bit of present moment work happening. Being here now, noticing the cognitive activity, the experience that's happening between my ears and behind my eyes. Okay, cool. But what is defusion? Exactly. Defusion is when you can notice that thought. So maybe receiving, maybe being in the present moment, but also where you can track what is the outcome of that thought. What happens when you have the thought, I'm a failure, I'm unlovable, I'm too stupid to learn ACT? I can tell you in all three of those instances, the outcome typically isn't very pretty for me. So rather than getting caught up in the thought, taking it as literal, instead what I do is notice the thought, actually pay attention to it. And the fancy behavioral word for this is an abstract tact. Tact meaning point to something. If you said, hey, Tim, show me your phone. You give me a high five. Good job, buddy. You say, Tim, show me your meditation bells. Oh, got them right here. Show me what your meditation bells sound like. And maybe you're smiling at me and saying, good job, you're reinforcing me. But then you say, Tim, show me what it feels like to be unlovable. Well, that's abstract. That's something private that's happening inside of me. I can't easily point to that, like a pair of glasses or a degree on the wall, or pointing to my eyeball or to a certain color. An abstract tact is where we go inside, where we look for things that aren't as easily identifiable. And for therapists, we've got to understand that the verbal utterance of even saying to our clients, well, what were you thinking in that situation? How does that feel? How are you feeling now? Requires an incredibly sophisticated repertoire of our clients being able to, first of all, be interested in themselves and turning their gaze inward, turning inward, interpreting felt sensations, interpreting cognitive, mind activity, thoughts, and actually labeling it and trusting that you are going to make sense out of what they're saying. So notice that diffusion is no simple task. Notice the thought, track it, see what happens when you buy into it. And then, here's how diffusion works. As you see it, maybe you have a label for it, an abstract tact, learning something new and very technical. So you might call it a hot thought. Maybe if you're a traditional CBT therapist, or if you've been interested in cognitive behavioral therapy, maybe you've heard of things like cognitive distortions, automatic negative thoughts. Maybe you might just call it a story. That's often what I do with my clients. Hey, when you notice that story of being unlovable show up, the story of not being smart enough to learn about ACT, when you notice that story, what do? You track the outcome. And when you the observer, not your therapist, not you writing to me in the comments and me picking up on what's happening functionally when something painful shows up, but it's you, the observer. When you see the thought, when you can point to it, when you can track the outcome, now you are free. Now you can choose how you respond. And I want you to notice that in ACT, we don't apply judgments. We don't use people's values to say, well, was that a values-driven move or not? We don't do that. Instead, we say, what's workable for you? Sometimes closing a book and walking away because I'm quite demoralized, frustrated, having a hard time with what I'm learning, that's a perfectly workable solution. Maybe it gives me the emotional space to walk away, hug my kids, play a video game, go on a walk, and come back to it later. The idea here is that you are the one who's doing the noticing, you are the one who is seeing it, and you're the one who's tracking the outcome. So we really could say that diffusion pulls in some other processes, which is also common of all of ACT's core 6 processes. And that's absolutely A-okay. We could also really sink our teeth into this idea that diffusion, as Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there's a space, and in that space is our freedom. We could say that diffusion helps us to throw a crowbar between stimulus and response and work it back and forth to create a little bit of space. And what's a stimulus? It's anything that you notice. Maybe if you have a lower intestinal rumble right now, your response to that stimulus might be, oh, I'm really hungry. Or maybe you feel like you're about to have a loose bowel movement. Maybe if you hear a crashing sound above you, that's a stimulus event to pause this video and go and see what the heck is going on. Maybe that crashing sound is a normal stimulus event that happens in your environment. And it's a stimulus event for you to put your headphones on. Maybe you end up cranking up the volume by hitting the speaker icon and turning it louder. We all respond differently to different stimulus events in different situations or contexts. So when we can be sensitive to that material as it comes up, it makes us more able to freely choose. That's a pretty cool way of defining freedom, I think. If we think about reacting less or having more choice over how we respond, we can appreciate that we're more present and less reactive. So you can take any painful, self-critical thought, and I'd like to invite you to just bring one to mind right now. Not your worst, most painful thought, like the hardest thing for you to tackle, but something that is reasonable and that feels safe to just bring to mind right now. I gave you some examples of mine. I don't think I would want to tackle unlovable today, but definitely one that's showing up that actually kind of caused a little bit of sweat in my armpits and for my body temperature to rise is I talk too fast and people find it frustrating to watch my videos. Okay. Whatever thought that you're having, for me, I talk too fast and people find it frustrating to watch my videos. I'm going to take a breath here. I'm going to add something to that thought that I'm noticing. I'm having the thought that I talk too fast and people find it frustrating to watch my videos. Let's add another one. I'm noticing that I'm having the thought that I talk too fast and people find it frustrating to watch my videos. Try it with your thought. First, just noticing the thought and adding, I'm having the thought. See what happens. Now add, I'm noticing that I'm having the thought that, and fill in the blank. Notice if you recoil from that thought, and notice how interacting with this thought differently changes how you interact with it. Does it help you to take the thought less seriously? Maybe it's a thought that strikes a chord with one of your values, something actually deeply important to you. Believe it or not, even though I may not know you, even though you may have never commented, even though I may never know you, even though you may be watching this video long after I'm deceased, you, as a learner, taking the time out of your day to connect with me matters to me. You are important to me. I'm having the thought that I actually care about slowing down and speaking a little more purposefully, a little slower, so that people can comprehend what I'm saying. I'm also noticing I have some social justice values showing up. When I look at the YouTube analytics, there's a lot of people from a lot of countries where English is not the primary language. And me speaking fast can actually be a significant barrier to people being able to learn from me and to be able to get good, helpful, useful information from this channel. Notice how your relationship to your thoughts changes. Diffusion isn't about making thoughts go away. It's not about changing your thoughts. It's about changing how you relate to them. Maybe you do the same thing that you've always done in the presence of those thoughts. That's okay. But it's about you being free to choose. Ultimately, there is some really cool research that shows that the more that we practice diffusion, the more that we expand our network of thoughts, of thinking, our verbal repertoire, all these things that we have in our head and the webs that they connect to, the more flexible we become as humans. The playful metaphor that I like to talk to my clients about is I like to describe our synaptic connections in our brains like roadways. The roadway, the neuron that fires in my brain, and the synaptic connection, the roadway that connects me to, I'm not a good teacher, to people find me frustrating, to I'm too stupid to learn act, to things like I'm unlovable. That is a nice, flat, paved roadway. Those thoughts can move quickly from point A to point B. from neuron to synaptic connection. That's quick. The roadway from the thought, ooh, I'm unlovable, to being loved and giving love and being the most sincere version of myself matters a lot to me. That roadway is not so well paved. It's like an old rocky dirt road that hasn't been excavated properly, and you're definitely going to mess up your car if you drive too fast down it. But the more that I spend time noticing that painful stimulus event being elicited in me, that thought that I can easily get fused to, the more I'm present with it, the more I'm accepting of it, the easier it is to defuse from it, to see it as separate from me, to engage with it differently. The easier it is to not believe it and to engage differently with it. Please feel free to sign up for my mailing list. You'll get a free copy of the Life Map ebook, but I'd also like to recommend that you check out my newest book, The Hero Within. Wrote it with my friends Troy Irwin and Steve Farrell. We have an entire chapter on diffusion and lots of helpful activities. If you want more, make sure that you checked out my other ACT skills videos, but definitely if you're looking for more accurate, authoritative information on acceptance and commitment therapy and those 6 common core processes, how they interact with one another, check out the video I referenced earlier called What is ACT and How to Do It. Thanks so much. Please feel free to send this with people in your world. You never know who this is going to make a difference to. Appreciate you following along with me.